supporting an injunction application filed by suspended Chief Justice Gertrude Tokonu in a bid to stop the possible impeachment process against her.
Also, the Tsar embattled Ashanti Regional Chair of the NPP, Bernardine Chibuesiako, still responding to medical treatment at the NIB clinic after suddenly falling ill during interrogation by EOCO officials.
And in a hard-hitting new documentary, Hooked on Red, award-winning journalist Godwin Asidiba uncovers the disturbing rise in the sale and abuse of this powerful narcotic. This is TV3. You're watching News Central. I'm Kemeni Amano.
And I am Mawina Egbeta. The bulletin starts right now. This afternoon, the Supreme Court has struck out Chief Justice Gertrude Tokonu's supplementary affidavit supporting an injunction application seeking to halt her suspension and the impeachment proceedings. The supplementary application filed on May 26 seeks, among other things, a restraining order against the five-member committee from continuing with the removal petition hearing. She also wants two justices of the Supreme Court, Gabriel Scott Puaman and Samuel Adibu Asiedu, removed as members of the committee. We'll take you to the court right now this afternoon, where the court has also been having choice words for lead counsels on the side of the state and then the Chief Justice as well on public utterances over the ongoing matter. Let's connect with Dennis Pwabere Wadam right now and get a bit more from him. Dennis, earlier the court overruled the AG's objection of the inclusion of the five-member committee members as defendants. Tell us a bit more about this.
In session, earlier, like I indicated, the AG raised an objection against the inclusion of the five members of the committee looking into the petition against the Chief Justice. The basis for that objection was that when you look at the writ of summons and some of the statements that were said in there, it makes reference to a specific paragraph that says that the affected person in the suit is going to be the Attorney General. And on that score, he says that what it means is that it's only the Attorney General who is the proper party to the suit, and the other five members who happen to be members of the committee are not proper parties. And to that extent, he prayed the court to exclude those five members from the suit. However, the former Attorney General, who happens to be the lawyer for the plaintiff applicant in this particular matter, the suspended Chief Justice, made the argument that no, the law is not just about who is going to be affected, but also has to be whether or not some reliefs or claims have been made against certain persons. And that when you look at the writ of summons, you would find that as many as 6 claims or reliefs have been made against the 5 other members who happen to be the second, third, fourth, and fifth and sixth defendants in that particular suit.
Right.
So the court had to decide on that matter, and that was dismissed.
And we know as well from reports coming from the court has struck out that supplementary affidavit as well. That was the affidavit which detailed the Chief Justice's description of trauma and the likes. What was the basis upon which the justices of the court arrived at the decision to strike that out?
Precisely so. So the Attorney General, so in court is the Deputy Attorney General who is representing the Attorney General's department in this. He made the forceful argument for the exclusion of that particular supplementary affidavit. In other words, a sworn statement of fact that the Chief Justice had made to some happenings that had happened subsequent to the filing of the suit. And those happenings were largely things that happened before the committee hearing the petition. Like rightly indicated, there are matters that had to do with whether or not her lawyer was given prior notice and how hearing dates were changed without notice to the lawyer, how she was searched, and even how some of the petitioners were not allowed to give evidence in person. So the matter that came before the court was the question of whether or not these were matters that were before the committee for which they should be protected under Article 146A, which requires that such hearings must be in camera. That was basically the argument of the Attorney General, or Deputy Attorney General, as he advanced in court, that those depositions as contained in that supplementary affidavit were entirely covered under Article 146A, that they should be in camera, and to that extent, they should not be made public. However, that was opposed by the former Attorney General, Godfred Yeboah-Dami, who makes the case that there have been judicial pronouncements that clearly define what amounts to proceedings. And for him, he does not think that what was contained in that affidavit amounted to proceedings. He actually stated that when you look at the affidavit, the supplementary affidavit, from paragraphs 1 to 6, were not matters that can be called proceedings. So he made reference to certain provisions of the Constitution, as well as the cases of Peter Derry and Tiger P.I., also making a reference to the very famous case of Pankedichum and the like, to make the case that a distinction has to be drawn as to what constitutes proceedings and what does not. However, there was an interesting development when the bench decided to engage him a bit more
on the arguments he was making.
Exactly. And it came to light that, yes, indeed, the matters that were being talked about were matters that had come before the committee for hearing. And the bench again went on recess and had to take a decision on that. And the ruling of the court was that they've come to the conclusion that when you look at what contained in that affidavit, it is clear that everything that was said in there were matters that were before the committee, and as such, they need to be protected by Article 146.8 of the 1992 Constitution. They need to be in camera for that matter. That supplementary affidavit should be struck out. Indeed, they did indicate that it was possible for the Attorney General to actually prosecute his case based on the main affidavit without the addition of that supplementary affidavit. So on that score, that was struck out.
And we know that the injunction hearing as well is supposed to take place. These are what some will call initial arguments that's come forth before the court. What about the injunction which the Chief Justice is seeking, restraining the committee from proceeding with the hearing until the final determination of her case?
So that's what's being heard now. So a while ago, the former Attorney General, Godfred Yeboah-Dami, who represents the plaintiff applicant, was on his feet to advance his case for the grant of that particular injunction application. He has started by making the case that, yes, there's a serious matter to be tried, which is largely a requirement that needs to be met for the grant of such an application. And the basis for that was to the fact that when you look at the determination of the prima facie case, it is the argument of Godfred Yeboah-Dami that his client, who is the Chief Justice, was not given a copy of that determination. He makes reference to a correspondence between the presidency and the suspended Chief Justice, a letter that was written to her indicating that, yes, a prima facie case has been determined or has made against her. He makes the case that she did not get a copy of that. So she's even unaware the kind of allegations that have been leveled against her and on what basis that prima facie case had been established. Based on that, he says, if she's not been given a copy of that determination, then it means that her right to fair trial has been undermined. He also added that it is unconstitutional for that to have happened. But you recall that the Attorney General in his affidavit in opposition did argue that they are giving copies to all people who are considered mandated to have copies of that information without saying more. To Godfred Yeboah-Dami, he says that that was a chilling argument to hear from the Attorney General, because he says that the Attorney General is supposed to be the foremost person who is supposed to protect the Constitution as well as the rights of all individuals in this country. And to make that argument for him, he found it
a bit strange that the Attorney General was making an argument in that light. Dennis, I want to leave you so that you can return to the court, and then you get details of the AG's arguments, the Deputy Attorney General's argument as well, and then subsequently we can get details as to the final determination on that injunction application. But Dennis Poaberi-Wedam is my colleague at the Supreme Court for us, and I'm certain in the course of this bulletin we will connect with him again to get details of exactly what's happening. But we know that the Supreme Court, the justices of the Supreme Court, they've struck out the supplementary affidavit, details of which we brought you yesterday, where the Chief Justice, amongst many other things, made the argument that her phones were being searched, she was being searched, and she wasn't allowed to go into the committee hearings with her phones. And then same for her lawyers, her family, immediate family as well, not being allowed access to the committee hearing, and questioning why the hearing was happening around the Osu Castle and mental torture amongst many other things. That has been struck out. The injunction application by the Chief Justice is currently being heard, and we'll take you there for details subsequently. But away from that, the Human Rights Court has fixed June 18, 2025 to rule on a motion filed by the former Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, seeking to restrain the Office of the Special Prosecutor from declaring him wanted, among other reliefs. Mr. Ofori-Atta is also asking the court to order the OSP to remove previous declarations from its social media platforms, and that declarations were those declaring him as a wanted person and a fugitive from justice. And the former Finance Minister's motion was moved by his legal team and is being contested by the OSP. The court will deliver its ruling on the matter on the 18th of June 2025. We can bring you some other stories still in relation to prosecution.
Indeed, let's talk about Chairman Wontumi, because the embattled Ashanti Regional Chairman of the NPP, you may know him as Bernard Enchibwe-Siakon, is still responding to medical treatment at the NIB clinic after falling ill during an interrogation at IOCO's offices here in Accra on Tuesday. Now, the development came shortly after his arrest and subsequent detention following an earlier invitation at the Criminal Investigations Department of the Ghana Police Service. Now, medical details are not known at this time, though sources indicate the chairman complained of acute discomfort during questioning. Let's get the very latest now. Crosby Noble Annan is our correspondent at the IOCO offices here in Accra. We understand some supporters spent the night there. They're still there gathering. Crosby, what can you report from there?
Well, Tiffany, if you come to the head office of the Economic and Organized Crime, you see a handful of NPP supporters or party supporters. Now, today they are not right in front of the office, if you like. They are across the street. That's where a handful of them have gathered. They are not agitated. They're not making noise. They seem very calm, just interested in how everything concerning the Ashanti Regional Chairman will play out, or is playing out already. We're seeing a few big names, two big names within the NPP. Apart from those who were here yesterday, this morning we're seeing his lawyer, Andy Apiakobi, come here, and according to him, he came here hoping to get an officer from IOCO to go with him to the health facility where Chairman Wontumi is being detained, so that he was given a clean bill of, he can then be transported here with the lawyer I'm talking about and the Apiakobi president, as well as the officer from IOCO president, so that the interrogation would continue from where they left off. However, when he got here, he's telling us that there's no officer here to go with him, so he's making his way back to his chambers where they will re-strategize and know what to do. We've also seen Kennedy Ejapon here, also hoping that he's coming to solidarize with his friend, the Ashanti Regional Chairman of the NPP. So far, We're yet to see Chairman Wontumi himself here. We're yet to see Bernard Nchibueze here, but we understand that he is still under detention at a health facility. There are reports that he's being kept at a facility within the 37 military hospital. There are reports that he's also being kept at a certain NIB clinic. We're not very certain. That information has not come out so well. We're not very certain where he's being kept, but we understand he's still at a health facility. And then at the right time, when all the other circumstances, the parameters are favorable for both Chairman Wontumi himself, his lawyers, and
Crosby, I'm going to have you raise your voice a little bit for me. And indeed, if you want to reposition yourself so we can hear you clearly. But while you do that, let's take a listen to counsel for Chairman Wontumi, former MP, Andy Apiakubi. And then I'll come back to you. Hopefully, the audio will be better.
We have hope that the there's no officer in this office.
Oh, it would appear that will also give us very poor audio, but that was Andy Apiakubi, who's counsel for Chairman Wontumi. If you recall, last night he was there as well, and indeed he announced to the press and the supporters there that Chairman Wontumi had taken ill and for that matter had been sent to the hospital. But let's connect again with Crosby Annan, who's following this story today. Crosby, you mentioned that supporters are still amassed at the frontage of Iyoko. What have they been telling you?
If you can hear me now, a handful of supporters of the NPP, they are here at the moment. But like I'll say, this time they're not at the forecourt or the front of Yoko specifically. They are across the streets because if you look at police presence here, there are a few police vehicles, police barricades here, as well as a handful of police officers at the frontage of Yoko. So the supporters cannot go there, but they are, however, across the street. What they're telling me is that they are very certain in their minds and in their hearts that this is some form of a political persecution of Chairman Wontumi. They insist that he has not done anything wrong and that he should be treated well according to the rule of law. This is a tool that the government, the NDC government, is using to, if you like, fish out some big names or top names within the NPP to persecute them, to pursue a certain agenda against the NPP government. That has been, I believe that has been their position throughout all the happenings concerning Chairman Wontumi, and they're holding very fast onto it. They are, however, hoping that the right thing will be done, and they're optimistic that, it will not go on for very long because Chairman Wontumi, as they put it, will be cleared of every wrongdoing, Kemeni.
Indeed. Crosby, let's take a listen to those supporters now.
We were told somebody they call Bank Hospital, our cantonment. But the follow Bank Hospital also now with the if you want to make up call 37 military hospital also with the National Security Force or health facility. So it's a fena a hard drink and crack. As at bed 3 a.m. calling the breathing ban of pain and the United States or health facility around 37 a National Security health facility member location. And now I'm lawyer I'm told so about the fact that the football are not they go and bring him. But here you read down on never so cause we are told say we look at Adenta High Court. One more you go across say almost free system to access through court processes. You know what to say possible. And one at losing and it's almost 50 million bill.
From so why am Bonu baby mean castle their mistakes are why and baby I will breaking law, the laws of the country. Nobody is above the law. You have
Well, you had some supporters of the NPP and specifically Chairman Wontumi who gathered at the frontage of Iyoko. Earlier was a correspondent who's been following the story, Crosby Annan. We'll stay on this because senior lecturer at the University of Ghana's Political Science Department, Dr. Joshua Zato, is accusing government of political vendetta against political opponents. He spoke on TV3's New Day.
What has happened to someone to me is a naked and shambolic attempt to cover up the government's woeful and inefficiencies in the Galamsey fight. If you want to talk about Galamsey, talk about Galamsey. Where is the state of emergency? Things that every single person believes will have a meaningful impact.
Dr. Joshua Zato there. Also, a senior communicator with Movement for Change on the same program said, well, he accused Chairman Wontumi of feigning illness in order to escape accountability. Here's Solomon Owusu.
He was on radio speaking loudly on top of his voice. Ghana for Musorio, Ghana for Musorio. Didn't you hear that?
Yeah, I did.
This
what
man,
has that got to do
this man drove by himself to the headquarters of Yoko. No. What's the name? CID. And was driving back. All of a sudden, arrested Yoko. This man is sick.
I don't
and Yoko too must be very serious.
You mean Chairman Wontumi can't get sick?
How can he be sick all of a sudden? The governor?
Governor of where?
Wontumi, you are not sick. Wontumi, whatever you are, and I dare any medical doctor who is saying this morning, Wontumi is sick. I want to see the report. He's a coward. You see, we must be serious as a country if we want to develop. As a result of the effects of Galamsey, women were having even their menstrual cycle shortened. They were giving birth to kids with 3 eyes, 4 eyes, and the perpetrator is saying, we must trivialize this matter. It cannot be. It cannot be. Look, he must be made to face the laws of the land, irrespective of his status. And I also disagree that politicians are the highest risk in terms of all these. If you are afraid to do the right thing, then you have no business being closer to politics.
Let's move away from this now, because the Minister for the Interior, Muntaka Mubarak, has charged African leaders to contribute their peace quota to peace building and strengthening of democratic institutions. He made these remarks at an ongoing forum by the Australian government in conjunction with ONEP on the theme Conflict Prevention and Sustainable Peace Forum.
Women remain underrepresented in formal peace negotiation, security institutions, and political decision-making. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Ghana has taken progressive steps to promote women's leadership in peace and democratic governance by appointing Ghana's first female vice president in 2025, 3 female chief justices and 2 female electoral commission chairs over the past 2 decades. In 2024, Ghana also passed the Affirmative Action, Gender Equality Act in 2024, mandating a minimum 40% female representation in public appointments. Cabinet has also ordered the validation of a new draft national agenda policy to replace the one prepared in 2015 to better align with contemporary peace and security dynamics. In addition, through our partners, we developed and implemented the Ghana National Action Plan on the UNSCR 1325 to institutionalize women's role in peace processes at national and community levels. My understanding is that the document is under review after implementation over the last 5 years. These efforts reflect our belief that women must not only be at the table, they must be part of the head of the table when decisions about peace and governance are made. To ensure conflict prevention and sustainable peace in West Africa, we must act decisively on the following: institutionalize women's leadership in peace architecture, at the national level, regional, and local. Invest in education, youth employment, and equitable economic development to tackle grievances and exclusion. Strengthen regional collaboration through ECOWAS protocols and joint security operations. Enhance digital literacy and counter disinformation, which often fuel political and ethnic tensions. Promote inclusive dialogue and participatory governance, particularly in fragile and transitional contexts. Prioritize early warning and rapid response mechanism driven by civil society and women's groups. Ladies and gentlemen, conflict prevention is not passive, it is proactive.
Now, away from that, Ghana is battling a new wave of drug abuse, one more dangerous and deeply rooted than ever before. The crisis surrounding the opioid known as Red 225 is spreading fast, devastating lives and communities across the country. In this hard-hitting new documentary, Hooked on Red, award-winning journalist Godwin Asedeba uncovers the disturbing rise in the sale and abuse of this powerful substance, now easily accessible even in Ghana's most remote areas. The documentary airs tonight and will be streamed live across all social media platforms. Here are excerpts of it.
Kofi Debra, once a proud commercial driver, now repairs umbrellas for survival. He walks under the scorching sun daily, praying for work. On the day I met him, it was already 2:15 p.m. and he had not eaten.
Now for some year, actually, what Galamisa see a drubi, a conumbi na jaya, timidi aqua, Jumaco, Akobohad. I'm a coso bishia and say, I'm in Misse, or the Kawan, and the Giano, in your easy.
If he earns money, drugs come first.
Dakukra, Miss Solena may be a no fitiano pana. Ubisama some crana me boof. Me share blabono, men fefu and nama bontin boys. The way musi namo, it is a ubia free, gentle, maybe biana, tis I say, men kwa my men say, oh, me more dams no, me tibia be mono to say bodemni. Oh, that is a drissana, a drenium lenana, a jama dream, say, oh.
He still believes he can turn things around. Until then, he looks up at the sky, waiting for a miracle.
Can me come and you baby. Now, if me drew ye and not say, me demi hura we mono, a mamma and you na money pedu or cry me huna just a dodgy. Because the way face na me sit here no bra na me sumit to say, me strong to say, dressing neat me be but I didn't hura we see money dear bra, say my bra Bobby. I'm a bunya kupompa say, Menya boafu biaja, on subebwan committee mejai, committee me jaya, may some face no.
His friend, Daniel Adu, was once a married man with children. Today, he does not know where his family is.
Drug no, I'm a man in tomatity over years, actually. Yakoba and he said, I feel I didn't have a demi home mono. I feel a mammy yes can show. It you know, a mammy dear home free or munches and a copy you my. Me buy and soon my better money who way. And a man coy. I'm almost so Wontumi in Kebi in Grafon. My home yes, me nim baby or more right now because me nim baby or more panama.
His addiction pushed them away. It breaks him.
Me didn't know yaw. It didn't want to hold me move be if we say because Bible in Yanko Pokra me at say, oh, no one show bakura a problem at this one or once we train the man. Ebony, it's your mammy didn't know yaw be oh me mo. And I didn't may and so forces to do it. And ya me pet. It's your mammy to me, and me pet.
He has tried to seek help, but the cost of rehab is a barrier too high to climb.
Oh, I'm going to say, almost 30 million. Now, me say, me go find over here. Me pa omo chobia me da omo gate ya no kra ma de achi. Ti right now me hia moa. Say, obi hu me mobo.
Well, catch the full documentary later tonight at 9. It will be here on TV3 and streaming on all our social media handles. You're watching News Central. We'll take our very first break, but before we do, this is what to expect when we return. More structures go down at Sakumono Ramsar site. We'll tell you more about that when we return. Let's get into that story about the demolition on those Ramsar sites, because it's second day of the demolition of unauthorized structures, excuse me, at the Sakumono Ramsar site here in Accra. The operations targeted buildings constructed in the wetlands, which were deemed partly responsible for the severe floods in the area. The operation follows recent floods in the Tema West municipality that led to destruction of properties here. And we know that the Greater Accra Regional Security Council, in collaboration with National Security and the National Disaster Management Organization, has therefore commenced the targeted demolition of a number of illegal structures. Listen, let's connect with Deborah Mensah, who is correspondent following this story. Deborah, good afternoon to you. Tell us what's going on. We see from the picture, you present to us that a lot of work is being done today as well.
Yes, Marinas, I beg your pardon, Kawini. The exercise is still ongoing. Effectively, we can widely see behind us. The minister is not here yet, but she is expected to join the exercise. I know some allegations and all that went on yesterday, but today we've not really seen anything like that. The NADMO has assured us that they are not going to do any human face, because there are also other people being affected through these kind of activities, building on the Ramsar side, which are the wetlands. So we know the floods that happen at Adenta and the environs.
Well, Deborah, it would appear we can no longer connect with you via Zoom, or work on that and then reconnect a little later. But if you can hear me, how many structures have got down today?
So right now we can say 2. They demolished one yesterday, and today they are working on one of the structures that were not, they were not able to pull down yesterday. So that is what they are working on currently. They've not touched any new building yet. So they are finishing with this one. Then we learned that they will move to other structures as well.
I see. We'll leave it here. Thank you so much for talking to us. Deborah Mensah there. She is with the team demolishing unauthorized structures at the Sakumono Ramsar site to prevent flooding of the area, including the Greater Tema West municipality. We can now bring you by the numbers.
Today on By the Numbers, we talk disciplinary matters in our various schools and places of education. And once hailed as institutions of discipline and moral guidance, many Ghanaian schools are now increasingly becoming hotspots for unrest and disorder. The growing trend of indiscipline among students has sparked nationwide concern.
Sharp, yai, view. Sharp.
Well, you've seen for yourself quite a number of them over the last between the last 2 years, right? In today's edition of By the Numbers, we turn our focus to this troubling issue, exploring the data behind the rising incidents of misconduct in schools across the country. Addressing the matter during a meeting with faith-based organizations, President John Mahama acknowledged the growing concern and stressed the need for a unified response. He called on all stakeholders to come together to curb what he described as a menace.
I guess that the breakdown of our values and our morals is creating some issues in our schools. I mean, you find young people going to schools with guns. There have been a few incidents where, incidents with guns have occurred in our public schools. And there's the incident of a girl who's almost lost her eyesight because of something like that. And so what do we do about the curriculum? What do we do about moral education? What do we do about discipline? What do we do about teacher absenteeism? The Inspectorate Division of the Education Service is not able to be everywhere to make sure that teachers are in school and all that. So how can we collaborate with the churches, to be able to find out whether the teachers who have been posted to this school are actually going to school and teaching? And I think that collaboration between us in that could, bring down the issue of teacher absenteeism and also make sure that the teacher is doing the actual work that he was asked to do. So there's a lot that we can do together in the education space.
Well, we've been combing through data seeking to extrapolate for you what the possible causes are and what the prevalence rate as well is in our respective senior high schools. Let's get onto the dashboard right now. And so for a lot of the metrics that we've gone through between 2017 up until 2025, the cases of indiscipline vary and ranges in quite different levels. Let's start off with bullying prevalence, which stands at 40% in our senior high schools, where out of the student population sample, 40% of them said they've experienced or have been affected by bullying in one form or the other. But when it comes to matters of disciplinary cases and actions being taken against students because they flouted school regulations in one way or the other, we've seen a 16% increase between 2020 and 2023, a sharp rise in terms of what that is. Now, when it comes to matters of student violence, we're seeing quite a substantial number of persons sampled from this data, which we've put together, amounting to some 55.7, more than half of the students say they've been affected one way or the other by violence. And then we try to paint a picture for you as to this trajectory where we say there's been a 16% increase between 2020 and then 2023 as well for you. Let's try and get a bit into the numbers and the bullying statistics, which we went through for you as well. When we look at major incidents which have involved students and in discipline conversations, some of which we were showing to you a short while ago, there's been 10 plus major of such incidents, a number of which became the subject of concern, which drew the president's attention. But let's try and walk you through a bit of a timeline all across our institutions, educational institutions, starting from August 5, 2022, where the University of Ghana, we witnessed a hall clash between students where stones were thrown, cars were set on fire at the University of Ghana. At the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology as well, there was a clash between halls. 11 persons were injured, 9 cars were damaged as well. In February of 2024, Osino Presby Senior High School, there was a clash between students and then locals. 1 person was killed, several others were injured. In March 5 to 6, 2024, the Christian Methodist School SRC Week riot, 2 students were killed. September 2, 2024, O'Reilly Senior High School, even early on this year as well, Sokode Secondary Technical, there was a clash between students and then town folks, which a report or a committee was set up, and then some work was done in that regard. But we're trying to find what the causes of these indiscipline were recorded in the schools, what is causing them, family issues, community influence, school policies, amongst others. Then there's a subject of peer pressure, which is always coming up in these conversations, and then media influence as well. These are the contributory factors or the causative agents based on the work done by the Ghana Education Service and then the National Commission for Civic Education, what they've been finding out. And that's it for you, by the way, or by the numbers.
Let's turn attention to health now, because the general public is being encouraged to report any symptoms of rash to the nearest health facility. The call made by health authorities comes on the back of the increase in Mpox cases in the country. So far, 19 cases have been confirmed in 6 regions.
Ghana has confirmed 10 new cases of Mpox, bringing the number of cases to 19. According to health authorities, 3 persons are currently on admission with no death recorded yet. So far, cases have been recorded in 6 regions: the Greater Accra, Bono, Western, Volta, Northern and Western North regions. Training on Mpox for teaching and regional hospitals is currently ongoing in Ofori-Atta in the Eastern region, while contact tracing is still ongoing. Although the numbers of confirmed cases of the disease keep rising, health authorities maintain there is no cause for alarm.
Clearly, they are on top of whatever they are doing, that department is doing, and so we should not panic. Nobody should panic at all. The ministry is in control, and as and when necessary, we'll come back to the population or the people of this country and give them the appropriate update. We are on top, and nobody, because we have activated the protocols to be able to contain. That is why we are bold enough to communicate to the people of this country.
The health minister further entreated the general public to be on the lookout.
Everybody is to report to the nearest health facility, especially if you have come into contact with anybody who has been detected or diagnosed of Mpox. I think contact tracing will also help us to contain this disease.
Mpox spreads from animals to humans and from humans to humans.
We'll now take you to the Ashanti region, also on the Mpox, because health authorities there have intensified surveillance measures for Mpox, despite all 10 suspected cases in the region testing negative. The Regional Health Directorate has expanded monitoring across all 43 districts to prevent potential outbreaks of the zoonotic disease, which can spread from animals to humans. Dr. Fred Adomako-Boateng, the Ashanti Regional Health Director, reassures the public that proactive steps have been taken to safeguard the communities. Although the suspected cases have been confirmed negative, the public is now being advised to remain vigilant to protect their own health.
We have set alerts and case definition to all our facilities, and then they have been asked to really mount up how to really integrate infection prevention and control, especially when it comes to contact with patients. So they are supposed to have the what we call the PPE, things that gloves that you are supposed to wear when you are going to touch a lesion. Make sure that you also do that. Then the normal hand hygiene that you are supposed to do when you have your 5 moments of your hand hygiene. And more importantly, in the facility, ability to isolate a place to make sure that when people have the disease, in order not for them to transmit it or spread it, we isolate them to a particular place in the facility so that we make sure that they are confirmed to have cases or not. These are cases that are easily managed in the house. And the way that you manage them in the house is not different from how we manage in the hospitals. We make sure that if these lesions are there, you give some space when you are attending to these patients. Make sure you also do your hand hygiene as and when you are supposed to do. And when we do this when we have the cases.
Well, on that note, we'll take another break here on News Central. You stay with us. Don't go away.
to be suspended. It is the argument of the former Attorney General Wontumi that to the extent that they have not received the determination of the former facilities made against the suspended Chief Justice, it was an infringement on her rights, for which she is going through a process that they do not think that is the intention of the Constitution. However, the Attorney General, who is being represented in court by the Deputy Attorney General, opposed that. He makes the argument that, there's been previous applications that have come before the court seeking the same release and wanting an injunction. Besides the very recent one that has been ruled on by the Supreme Court itself, and the one that the court actually gave its reasoning. That is the case of the Vincent Assefa versus the Attorney General, in which the court actually denied that injunction application as well, to say that, no, when you look at what is before the court, it's a matter of the Constitution being agreed, and that at no point did the President violate the Constitution. It makes the case that in terms of the summer facilities, the definition not being given to the suspended Chief Justice, he says that as far as they are concerned, all persons who are entitled under the Constitution to receive copies have received same. So to that extent, they prayed on the court to actually dismiss the application.
And so, we've heard the decision of the court. Then it's just briefly, the substantive is still outstanding. Do we have a clear date or a clear understanding as to how that is expected to proceed now?
Well, so just like in the case of the Vincent Assefa, where even in the ruling of the court, they have been cautious not to go into a substantive matter. Today in court, while the Attorney General was making his argument, there were some parts of the argument that, in the view of the court, were gearing towards the substantive matter. So the court had to call on them to exercise restraint, not to go into that side of the matter, because it's a matter that the court is getting examining. When it also came to the counsel for the plaintiff applicant, that's the former Attorney General, it also came to light that, in the view of the court, some of the matters that he was urging on the court were actually matters that will be determined in the substantive seat itself. Then again, the court came in to caution that they refrain from such arguments because the matter is still yet to be determined. Yet so, they stick to the arguments that they needed for the grant of the interlocutory injunction or otherwise. So clearly, the court is minded that the substantive matter is so pending and they're going to deal with it, but you are unable to tell exactly how that will go. Even though in the previous application for an interlocutory injunction, some of the matters canvassed have actually been dealt with by the Supreme Court. It is any time yet to want to make any suggestion as to what when it comes to the substantive suit itself.
Dennis, thank you very much. That's Dennis Wadams, my colleague in court for us this afternoon. The latest is that by a unanimous decision, the Supreme Court has dismissed the injunction application as filed by the Chief Justice seeking to halt the constitutional process seeking her removal. The justices of the Supreme Court made the argument that her case lacked merit, and we heard from Dennis, no clear word as to when the substantive case will be heard, but trust us to provide you all of the details as they come through, even as we wrap up this afternoon's edition of the Bulletin. And so that's the latest from the court. Some will say not surprising, considering the fact that there had been similar of such arguments which had been made, and then the court decided not to grant the injunction. And so we'll see how all of that plays out.
There'll be discussions of that later on tonight, on Ghana Tonight, and then also on 360, News 360 at 7 p.m. here on TV3. But it's time for us to go.
I am Awina Egbeta.
And I am Kemeni Amano. Thank you so much for your company.